citizen's identity is articulated in terms of the otherness of the animal, of apes. And this articulation of identity very often was, I think, I would even be inclined to say always, has a narrative structure. The discourse on being civilized, being wild, on citizens, on the history of humankind, is a narrative discourse. And this is a narrative is a very specific structure. It has protagonists, the main characters doing things, which often become heroic. Which are the very structure of the narrative tends to cast its main protagonists in the form of heroes. And then there's the hero and there are antagonists. There's a value structure in the narrative, which is binary very often, almost always I think. And opposing good versus bad, and creating a world, an imaginary world, one might say, with a temporal structure and a geographic structure, having civilized spheres and uncivilized spheres, and the hero then transgressing boundaries between the civilized and the wild. And talking apes, I think we encounter three basic narratives in the history of Western thought. The first one is creation, by a transcendence of Almighty God. The second one being the narrative of progress, which was a very convenient way of 19th century citizens and scientists and scholars to keep apes at arm's length. This gesture of rebuttal we see all the time, already in the United States. Apes come very close, because in scientific research we see that we are very closely related to them, genetically also. And then there's always this gesture of not too close, because we are humans, we stand high above apes, we are, and there's this thing about the taboo animal-human boundary and the purity of the human category. Apes should not intrude into that, should not contaminate the purity of humans. And if you talk about progress, then of course we can, perhaps we, in fact, we descend from apes, but that's way back. It was in very early days, and since that there has been progress. And the Nietzsche quote I started with is a very nice articulation of that. Since then there has been progress from our apish origins to an ascent towards civilization, an ascent towards humanness. Humanness meaning that you are European, that you are male, that you are a citizen and not a peasant or a working person. So that's the first instrument of, and in the book I apply this in a very, it would take very many lectures like this one to do it, but I would just like to briefly mention it here. And then a very important and very difficult second viewpoint is the work of a British ethnologist I admire greatly, and I think is very important in this context. That's Mary Douglas, and her research is about how humans categorize the world, and we all do that, and the citizen especially does that. And when you categorize the world, things have to be this or that, and you have to put boundaries between the categories somewhere. And of course, a very important category is the category of the human. And then the human has boundaries, and the other category is the animal, and then there's the animal-human boundary in between. But then the funny thing is that these apes arriving on version 600 topics, these apish ancestors being discovered by 19th century scholars, Neanderthal man, Pithecanthropus, etc. These apish organisms are somehow in between human and animal. They are not really human and not really animal. They are betwixt and between, both advanced in a sense. And there's a very substantial body of research by ethnologists. In the first place by Mary Douglas herself, but many others as well. And my book belongs to that, because I apply her ideas in my book. that this is about all sorts of things. This is about, the research is about the cultural perception of all sorts of things which are somehow in between categories. If you look at, for example, funny example, in Central Africa, in Congo, in small villages, in the tropical coast, where people perform rituals, the central things in the rituals are often animals which live in the water and on the land, which are often like mouse, for example, or animals which are active at night and during the daytime, or which are active at the break of dawn, in a boundary situation between night and day, or between water and land. And very often in rituals in these villages, and even in Tilburg, I could give some examples also from Germany, in rituals, very often things like things from the body which are somehow not from the body itself, but not from the environment, but in between, like hairs which fall out, nails you get on, masturbation drop, semen, saliva, mucus from your nose. All these things are very, very taboo, people are very uneasy about it, which means that, and this is the shortest formula you could Mary Douglas theory on, which means that things which are physically marginal are symbolically central. Things which are physically marginal, or which are somehow marginal in the landscape of nature, are very good to think with, to symbolize with. And it's my thesis in my book that apes, in the history of Western thought, were a very ambiguous category, because they are not humans and not animal, but both of us, or in between. So there is this thing which the other speakers have spoken about in this lecture series of animals being very frowned upon, being looked down upon. But among animals, apes have a very special status because they are not just animals, but they are somehow very close to us, uncomfortably close. So that because of their ambiguous nature, they conduct this gesture of rebuttal, of keeping them at a distance. Okay, so that's two viewpoints, analytical viewpoints I apply in the book, and not as a final definition, a final diagnosis of how it all was, but more as a research program. This is what I would like to, which I try and apply, and I try and part of the students to try and apply this now, to see what it brings us, to see if it can give us new insights into this funny thing about humans and animals. Now back to Max Scheler, which is very I love. He was, for a long time, he was my favorite philosopher. And I did my doctoral thesis about him. And he's very typical for many philosophers, perhaps more than half of German philosophers. Undoubtedly there are philosophers about who have an opinion about this. But I think more than half of German philosophers would in some way argue that humans are Vernunft creation, and that this is a very substantial difference between humans and other animals. Anyway, this is very clear in Max Scheler's thought. He says, well, he has this quote, guys, it's not a stage of life, but a principle opposed to life. Though, even to life in man, it's a new phenomenon which cannot be derived from natural diffusion of life. It's something special, and it makes humans unique. It creates a Sonderstellung. Die stelling that's mentioned in Cosmos, that's the title of this 1928 book, is a Sonderstellung. Because of Christ. Humans have Christ, and animals don't have Christ. But then, recent research since the 1960s into non-human primate behavior, into COVID behavior, crows, etc., into cetacean behavior, dolphins, etc., has shown that there are very many behaviors in these animals which falsify the idea that humans are unique. Because what was it we pointed to when we said humans were unique, that humans have this understanding in nature? We pointed to self-awareness, for example, but apes, there are these famous experiments with chimpanzees, with some other apes, and with dolphins as well. These animals recognize themselves in mirrors, for example. There's massive tool-making in apes, to the point of having cultural traditions which differentiate your own group from other groups, a different culture. There's communication with symbols, the famous experiments with bonobo kanji, synthesis as well, using American Sign Language. There is the reading of other minds. Brilliant research going on in Leipzig in the Max Planck Institute für Evolutionäre Anthropologie, Mike Tomasello, psychologist, doing mind reading experiments with chimpanzees, and it's phenomenal devastation. Arithmetic skills, counting.